All right, I think that everyone really understands why and that the iPod setup that integrators like to sell is risky, right? It's really easy, right? There's lots of you can just look at it, look at all the risk, get past that. What I think is really interesting and important that we look at and think about is how does this trick work? Why is it that an integrator or a vendor can come in and pull this stunt and have so many people fall for it? But it's really not unlike Three Card Monte. And if we kind of learn what it is they're doing, because they all do it, and I don't even know if how much the vendors really think this through, versus it's just so obvious when you're trying to make a sale that this will work, that it's just what they do, right? They're not sitting around thinking about, oh, this is how I'm going to misdirect them, this is how I'm going to hide things. They're probably not getting that complex. It's happening in their head, obviously, but it's subconscious. It's not this really intentful organization of how you're going to trick a customer. But they all do it, and salespeople do this in general, but in risk, we really end up with a lot of uh, this kind of misdirection, and that's where we get kind of a standard pattern that is used to make a sale. So the first piece is identifying a false thing to look at. So when we're looking at a single server and we're saying, "Oh, it's risky," and it is, right? There's an amount of risk to having a single server. If something goes wrong, you're just down. What do? You need a way to mitigate that. Okay, so we accept that. That's great. Now, if you have that single server and you have someone looking at it, the obvious thing is, I have one server, I need another. That's what a human would naturally do, right? I have a house, I'm worried it might burn down. What's the answer? I need a second house. I have a car, what if it breaks? I need a second car. This is not hard, this is what we would do. But the salesperson says, well, what's the part of this house that matters? It's your bed, or maybe it's the bathroom, right? Or what's the part of this car that matters? It's the engine. And that seems reasonable. Oh gosh, yeah, the engine, that's always what breaks. Yeah, I need a second engine. Well, so they did this trick. They got you to start thinking about a thing that fails rather than looking at the common sense whole thing. Okay, while they get you looking at this, and in the case of our server, it's the application, right? Oh, the app server, because that's how end users tend to look at the single server. What's its purpose, right? They don't think about the fact that it has storage. They don't think about the fact that it has compute. They don't think about the fact that it runs an app and a database and different things. They only think of it as, I want an app. So when they say the application, to the end user, that's the same thing as saying the server. So this begins the trick. Now they've been focused on a subset of functionality that's easy and cheap to make redundant, to make highly available, while the parts that are difficult and expensive to make highly available are being ignored. While the customer is focused on this piece, basically the integrator takes the rest and just kind of shuffles it off to the side and says, okay, don't look over here because you're looking at this hand. Pay no attention to the fact that we're hiding stuff over here. Now we focus on the application. How do we make the application highly available? Well, we make it redundant, right? Which often, in these cases, is making it highly available at that very specific layer. The application itself is very highly available. Because that's pretty easy. Most applications do that just out of the gate, right? You want to make Active Directory highly available. What do? You just take a one VM on one server, one VM on another server, put Active Directory on it. Guess what? Magically, it's highly available because that's AD does all that work at the application level. It's that easy. All we have to do is not screw it up. Done, right? So this is not hard. Integrators love this. They get to focus on easy sales that make lots of money, that don't require them to have a lot of knowledge, and don't require them to take on a lot of risk to know what they're doing. So they're basically bypassing the IT job. Rather than doing the thing that they need to do, they're finding a way to completely bypass it so they can just not do it. So and they get the customer to keep focusing here. The customer normally knows that there's this extra piece. They're not completely blinded that suddenly they're being sold a lot more equipment than it seemed like they needed, right? We had one server, we thought we needed two. Now suddenly there's three. We're not clear what the third one is. Sometimes they go for four because they try to tell them that you need three on the front end, not two, and they'll come up with, sometimes reasonable reasons why three is better than two. Often it's not very plausible. And So they see the equipment adding up. They see the dollar signs adding up. Why is this so expensive? Why am I paying 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times? Literally, we've seen 6 quite often. Compared to what I started with when all I need is 2 of something. If I needed 2 houses, it would just double. If I needed 2 cars, it would just double. And my second one doesn't have to be as good as my first one. It's just enough to live in or get around. So I expect that double is normally a little bit high. And at least my vendor should give me a break because I'm buying 2, right? One way or another, you expect double to kind of be the max, not below what you can get. Now you have the storage piece. Well, that's storage. And we've become accepted in the industry. And we've talked about this a million times, right? That the moment you say SAN, even IT people, 90% of them, and I mean that, 90% or higher, 99% possibly, don't really know what a SAN is. They have a decent idea. They know it's storage. They don't understand that it's distant block storage. They don't understand that it doesn't imply anything. It's just a set of protocols and a way to hook it up, right? It could be anything beyond that. But SAN is just complex enough of a concept and so industry accepted as something you don't look into that by saying, oh, no, that's the SAN, or that's sometimes the storage, right? Because it's become a thing. You can just say it's storage and people kind of turn off. We're like, okay, don't worry about that because it's a magic black box that's going to solve your problems. So we don't have to look at that. And everyone is so casual about, you don't have to look at that. It's storage. Duh. How stupid are you? Storage doesn't fail, right? No one has ever lost data in the history of the world. You don't need to look at that. That is such a mantra that it works. It's insane that it works, but it works almost all the time. It's such a by-the-book tactic that you can use it without fear that your customer is going to freak out and kick you out of the door for saying something so insane. And yet, we all know it has to be, right? It has to be completely insane. So now we have these extra servers that we're paying attention to. And then, okay, well, we need to talk to that. Well, yeah, you'll need switches. Oh, okay. But you always need switches, right? Oh, yeah, I suppose I do. No, you didn't need switches before. But, I mean, you did, but somewhere else. Now we're introducing an entirely new network behind the servers. But since you already buy switches and stuff, like, oh, yeah, no, that I must need switches. Can't I just use the ones I already have? No. That's, right? They don't perform right. They don't do whatever. Right. And of course, that would be a bad idea. You do need special switches for this. They have to be high performance. They have to fail over. They have to be configured just for this. You don't need them very big. They can be little ones, but so it's pretty easy and plausible to get someone to go, oh yeah, no, I need all these switching ports and they have to be super fast and probably 10 gig E, maybe 40 gig E or whatever. And it can't be any latency. It can't have any, it's got to be here and it's got to be redundant. My normal one isn't really redundant like that. Okay, right. So you end up being able to really make these switches sound like they're obvious. Of course you need them, and that you can't use things you already have. And so we really quickly, but because they're redundant, people go, okay, so there's no risk. There's no such thing as no risk. Every layer has risk. So we just turned, one layer, which had risk that we could pretty easily address, into 3 layers and focused all the attention on the original application layer. And it was sleight of hand. Look here. Look, we dealt with it. And then this extra switching layer, well, but it's redundant. Don't worry about it. And then magic stuff beyond the switches. Don't look at that. Pay no attention. And so it's really easy with a sleight of hand to get someone to say, oh, yeah, we have all this redundancy. And it's easy. Did you have redundancy before? No. Do you have redundancy now? Yes. Therefore, it's redundant and magic and safe. Oh, okay. Yep. But it's fake. When you say, did you have redundancy before? You aren't answering, do I have any redundancy? Of course you do. You have redundant fans. You probably have RAID. There's redundant disks in there. You might have 2 CPUs. There might be all kinds of power supplies, all kinds of redundancy, most likely assumed in your original piece. It's pretty unheard of to have 0 redundancy, right? So clearly we're asking, do you have system level redundancy? Is your system redundant? No, the system is not redundant. Components within the system are redundant. In the new system, we break it all up. Do you have redundancy? And they know you're implying that you do, and people don't want to answer incorrectly because it's just human nature. And so they'll look and say, well, I can see a component that has redundancy. So yes, I have redundancy as a checkbox, not as a concept, just as a checkbox. And they're ignoring the fact that the system is not redundant. The original system wasn't redundant. The new system is not redundant. Just like the original system had components that are redundant, the new system has components that are redundant. The resulting risk is much higher. The resulting availability is lower. It is that simple. Math makes it easy. But it's really easy to forget to do the math because of all the misdirection. Now, here's the easy thing. Reverse it, right? Start with the exact same initial discussion. Here's your server, right? You have risk. It's not redundant. You're right. Okay, we need to make this safe. We need high availability. Okay, what is the purpose of this server? What if we looked at it the other way around? It's the storage server and some apps run on it. Okay, that's my storage server. Now, the first thing we're going to do is take the storage server and shift it over here and do nothing to protect it. We're going to keep all that risk. Okay. Now, it's going to need to talk to the world, right? So we're going to put some switches in front of it that we don't need normally. We didn't need them before, but now we're going to add these switches. And they're, of course, going to carry some risk, but we're going to put in 2 and make them redundant, so that risk is going to be tiny. Okay, I see where you're going. And then we're going to add a whole bunch of servers in front of it, 2, maybe 3. And then we're going to put the application there, right? But don't worry, we're going to have a bunch of them at really high cost, and they're going to be super redundant. If you approach this the other way, if you were looking at the storage all along, instead of or if we directed you to look at the storage all along, it's insanely obvious that the original risk was kept in the original box. It was never changed in any way. The original risk is simply there, and every other layer, no matter how low the risk is of that individual component, it's a new component that wasn't needed before and carries new risk. And risk is additive. And it's kind of easy to convince people through body language and pressure and whatever, it's kind of bullying, to say, oh, because the front layer is so safe, we don't add it to the risk. And in fact, it's so safe, we're going to take away from the risk. Obviously, that's not true. It's not how risk works, right? It's just another thing that can fail. It in no way mitigates the original thing that can fail, so failure has increased. Risk has gone up, availability has gone down. It is all sleight of hands to get us to look at the piece we want people to pay attention to and to look away from where the actual risk is. And that's what makes it incredibly effective. And the end goal, of course, is to make sales of hardware. And by taking one item, they have a system that's less safe than the original single server, but they often sell between 300% and 600% of the original product, often at higher margin because of the way that they're able to do it. And so you're looking at a massive amount of hardware profits from the sale, and then because of the complexity, they add in lots of integrator hours, which is often where the really big profits are. So this process is a huge moneymaker, right? It allows the salesman to go in who was going to make $20 and suddenly come out with $10,000, $20,000 in their pocket from a single sale. And the customer feels good because a salesman took care of me and someone else is responsible for all these things. But at the end of the day, when that system fails or the extra money is spent, yeah, you can convince lots of customers to feel good about getting ripped off. That's the secret of a good con, right? Is not allowing the customer to get that feeling that they've been conned later just to get the money out of their pocket, right? A really good con artist working at the airport or on the side of the street is not going to get all the money out of your wallet and have you walk away mad, right? A person who walks away mad is going to go to the police, is going to go to forums, is going to put up a sign, whatever. They're going to do something, or they risk that they're going to do something, and that's not what you want. They may not come back to you, but even that, they might, right? A satisfied customer or a customer who feels satisfied, right, will come back and give you money again later. Maybe not for several years, but they could be a cash cow that just keeps coming back. They're what we call the stupid rich in the Scott Adams quadrant of economics, right? The stupid rich you can make feel good while emptying their wallets while not giving them any benefit. And if they don't have an advocate, right, if their IT department isn't doing their job and protecting them from this kind of scam, every salesperson is going to run this kind of thing. And once one's identified that customer, they're going to try to run other ones. Maybe this one's like the low-hanging fruit, but other ones are going to be coming down the pike, right? Oh, you need a UTM. We'll come up with a reason why you need a UTM. Here's a huge amount of markup. Now we're in the door, right? And it's just not that UTMs don't ever have a place, just like SANs do have places. UTMs do have places, but there's all these tactics to sell people things that they didn't need yesterday at huge markup, And once you've identified a customer who is susceptible to that type of marketing, they're like vultures, right? So people who use integrators keep using integrators in that way. Not that all integrators are bad. The concept of an integrator isn't a bad thing, but it is a little bit quirky, right? If you think about it, under what conditions do you want your vendor slash a vendor advocate implementing large amounts of your infrastructure? You need vendors, and there's nothing wrong with vendors. Vendors are great people. You need a vendor, and you often need an integrator because they need to make sure that the parts will work together, that you're getting the right parts. Sometimes that goes beyond the scope of a single vendor, so you need someone who's kind of in that ecosystem. But at the end of the day, having your integrators be the ones who are doing your IT is not just a conflict of interest, but it also has all kinds of moving part problems within your organization. And so we could go deep into when that makes sense or when that doesn't make sense, but it integrators who are vendor advocates, right? Any of them that actually sell the stuff. If you get an integrator who doesn't sell anything and doesn't represent a vendor, that's different. There is such a thing as a customer advocate integrator, but they're pretty rare because people go to integrators specifically because they're looking for salespeople, possibly salespeople who work with more than one vendor. So it's a little bit better than going directly to a single vendor, but not really, because generally the integrator is just going to focus on whoever has the best markup or is easiest for them to support, not on what's right for you. And so by selecting the right vendor out of the gate, you actually may be a step ahead of working with an integrator who may use their position within the ecosystem to lead you astray, even to the level of picking the wrong vendor, right? So you have to be extra cautious there, that you may have taken an important choice out of your own hand without realizing it.